In 2022, we celebrate 130 years of HBCU football. On December 27, 1892, Livingstone and Biddle College, now known as Johnson C. Smith University, played in Salisbury, North Carolina, with Biddle winning 5-0. Over time, HBCU football has evolved. HBCU football's popularity continues to rise. Millions attend games each year and millions more watch on television. The HBCU bands provide some of the top entertainment in the country. Over that time, some of the best players to ever play in the National Football League played at HBCUs. Every Monday through Friday on the HBCU Football Daily Podcast, national radio and television host Donal Ware takes a look at what's happening in HBCU football and talks with coaches, players, administrators, and media about the 2022 season. Make sure you join the conversation on social media by using the hashtag HBCU130. Now, here's your host, Donal Ware.
You got it locked to the HBCU Football Daily Podcast for today, Tuesday, September 27th. I'm Donal Ware. It's Takeaway Tuesday here on the Daily Podcast. I've got a couple of takeaways that I want to talk about from week 4 in HBCU football. First of all, want to give condolences to Tyler Smith, a player for Alcorn State, whose mother and young sister were among 4 that were killed late Saturday evening in a traffic accident at the Warren-Issaquah County line on US 61 North. That's in Mississippi. And so, man, I tell you what, I feel for Tyler Smith. We here at Box to Row are praying for he and his family, for the entire Alcorn State University community, because it affects everyone. It affects Alcorn State as a whole. You know, it is affecting Tyler Smith. You know, it's affecting his teammates. They have to the ones that really know him, close to him, etc. And so our thoughts and prayers are with Tyler Smith, his family, and the entire Alcorn State University community. That is extremely tough. So I want to look at the Box to Row, or the HBCU National Players of the Week, and we have a couple, as a matter of fact, this week. And speaking about Alcorn State, and there's a running back. Okay, now, we can talk about a lot of different universities being running back U. I mean, you can talk about North Carolina A&T. You can talk about Alcorn State. I mean, there's quite a few that can really have sort of that moniker of running back U. I think certainly, Alcorn State has had a plethora, of running backs here, particularly under Fred McNair. Jarvian Howard, one of the running backs for Alcorn State, one of the HBCU National Players of the Week, 295 yards rushing and 4 touchdowns in the ballgame. He carried the ball 24 times. And at one point, he scored 3 straight touchdowns, including what amounted to be the game winner. And Fred McNair, Coach McNair, on his weekly press conference on Monday, talked about this young man. He's a transfer from Syracuse. You know who he likened him to? He likened him to Earl Campbell and said the sky is the limit for this young man, and really thinks that he has the ability to really play at the next level. So Jarvian Howard, one of the Box to Row National Players of the Week. The other is Isaiah Freeman of Lincoln of Pennsylvania. He threw for 298 yards, 16 of 27 in terms of pass completions. He was also 2 of 4 for 48 yards on the last drive. Lincoln got a game-winning field goal as time expired. He had 318 yards of total offense. Then not only did he throw for the 3 touchdowns without a single interception, but he also had another rushing touchdown. So he was responsible for 4 touchdowns, right? So again, Isaiah Freeman, the quarterback for Lincoln of Pennsylvania, also the HBCU National Player of the Week. And I look at Lincoln. Lincoln has won a couple of ball games, beat Johnson C. Smith by the way, this past Saturday. So it's won a couple of straight ball games. Has Lincoln? I think Josh Dean is trying to turn getting that program turned around. Taking a look at the HBCU coaches and media polls, 1 and 2 in both polls. Jackson State and North Carolina Central. Jackson State and North Carolina Central, 1 and 2 in both polls. North Carolina Central and Jackson State both are 4-0 on the season. We still have remaining quite a few teams that are undefeated. We'll talk about those teams because that's one of my takeaways. Again, in the coaches poll, Alcorn State number 3, Prairie View A&M number 4, Hampton dropping its first game of the season. Hampton played Delaware, nationally ranked Delaware fell to the Hens, but Hampton rounds out the top 5 in the coaches poll. In the media poll, Albany State 3, Virginia Union 4, Florida A&M 5. Both of those teams moved up 1 spot from last week. So you can, and of course, you can check out the HBCU coaches and the media polls on our website at boxtorow.com. So you have Jackson State, you have North Carolina Central, you have Benedict, you have Fort Valley State, and you have Langston and Virginia Union all remain undefeated. When is the last time we had 5 or 6 5? Wait, so let me recount. Jackson State, North Carolina Central, Fort Valley, Benedict, Virginia Union, Langston. When is the last time we had 6 HBCU programs undefeated through 4 weeks plus 1, when you count opening week, through 5 weeks? We have 6 HBCUs that remain undefeated. So that's one of my takeaways, certainly. One of my other takeaways, North Carolina A&T's victory over Jackson State. As a matter of fact, that victory by the Aggies propelled the Aggies to number 8 in the coaches poll and receiving the most votes in terms of others receiving votes, receiving the most votes amongst others receiving votes in the media poll. It's a huge win. You're beating the defending champs. That's number 1. Number 2, it was a close game, especially, and it was really a close game throughout. The score was 41-27. A&T was able to kind of, in the second half, kind of maintain that 14-point lead when South Carolina State pulled to within 7. A&T went right back down and scored in the second half. I thought the turning point, there was a turning point in the game, and it's interesting because it seems like turning points for A&T winning against South Carolina State happened on special teams. Let's go back to 2015, a fake field goal when really South Carolina State had this game in the bag, tried to attempt a fake field goal. I mean, I think I'm trying to think if South Carolina State may have been up like 6-0 or something like that. I mean, it dominated the game. Fake field goal didn't work. A&T was able to come back, ended up kicking a field goal. It turned out to be the game winner because South Carolina State had one more opportunity and couldn't get a field goal to go that was missed. So you look at that. I go back to last year, right? South Carolina State on a roll, a fake punt. Excuse me. Let me back it up. 2015 was a fake punt, okay? Last year was a fake field goal that didn't work. A&T ultimately wins the game. And then this year on special teams. So the score was A&T led 14-13 right before the half. South Carolina State was to get the ball to begin the second half. I think South Carolina State had a little bit of the momentum. A&T kicked off, having taken the lead, and then the returner for South Carolina State kind of bobbled the ball in the end zone instead of downing it. I think it hit him in the field of play. What happened? It hit him in the field of play. The ball went into the end zone. So if he gets in the end zone, downs it, it's a touchback. I don't know if he didn't know that or what happened, but he decided to bring it out. It was only able to get to like the 10-yard line. I think South Carolina State, I don't know if South Carolina State got a penalty. They ended up doing a kneel down. A&T used its timeouts wisely. As a matter of fact, A&T only had 2 timeouts. So South Carolina State could have gone into the locker room without really having to take a snap. But something happened. I'm not really sure. There was some kind of confusion. It wasn't the greatest officiated game, quite frankly. A&T gets the ball back, gets a good return from the punt, and immediately trots out Andrew Brown, who knocks down a 49-yard field goal. Now, he's got two 49-yard field goals this year, and I think a 48-yarder as well. He only missed one field goal, and the one field goal he missed was from 53 yards on Saturday against South Carolina State. Even that field goal had the leg, and it was close. So it's these mishaps by South Carolina State that seems to be costing the Bulldogs in this series. Listen, A&T has won 7 straight games. A&T used 4 quarterbacks, 4 in this game. First quarterback got hit really hard. It was a targeting call. It ended up not being targeted, but it was a big hit. Helmet came off. The penalty stood, but no targeting. But the quarterback was in concussion protocol. Next quarterback comes in, gets injured with his foot, went off with an ankle injury. Jalen Fowler, who's been the incumbent quarterback, was the veteran quarterback from last year, comes in and does a solid job. He's like 8 of 14, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, did a solid job, but it was the running game. Much like South Carolina State was able to run against A&T last year, A&T was able to run against South Carolina State this year. You look at Bayshaw Tootin, had a phenomenal game, had 2 rushing touchdowns, had another passing touchdown off of a shovel pass. He was unbelievable in the ball game. And the A&T defense held South Carolina State to only 12 yards rushing. No Kendrell Flowers. Kendrell Flowers did not play in this game. And I think that was big also. Now, I'm going to tell you, B.J. Davis, the linebacker for South Carolina State, and now listen to me. I watched Javon Hargrave play. I watched Javon Hargrave in 2014 as an interior lineman, register 6 sacks against Bethune-Cookman in a big win for South Carolina State, who I don't know if the Bulldogs were down that year, but it's definitely a game Bethune-Cookman should have won. I think Bethune-Cookman was favored in that game. It was a better team, and South Carolina State pulled it out. I watched Shaquille Leonard play for 4 years, and called games for 4 years of Shaquille Leonard, right? B.J. Davis is, he makes as many plays, more plays, I'm going to say that, than those guys. He had, I think, 15 tackles in the game. He was all over the field in that football game. And that was a big win, I think, for A&T going now into Big South play. For South Carolina State, still doesn't hurt South Carolina State. Remember, South Carolina State was 5-5 going into the last game of the season against Norfolk State. If Norfolk State had won that game, no, it didn't matter. That game didn't matter. So South Carolina State had already wrapped up the MEAC and really, I don't even think played a lot of his players. Still ended up winning that game 6-5, and then beat South Carolina, beat Jackson State in the Celebration Bowl to go 7-5. But we're seeing a South Carolina State team that maybe not much different than last year in terms of some of the outcomes and where this team is, where the team is 1-2 right now. The University of South Carolina on the horizon. I think Virginia University of Lynchburg after that, and then getting into MEAC play to close out the season. But, I was surprised. To be honest with you, I was surprised. And quite frankly, I thought, on paper, maybe that South Carolina State was the better team coming into that football game, but A&T was able to pull it out. So that is another one of my takeaways. Another takeaway, Bethune-Cookman with a big win over Grambling. Okay. And so now, but everything's still ahead of Bethune-Cookman. I mentioned that Grambling had already had 1 loss in the conference, but that game against Jackson State wasn't a conference game. So this was the first loss for Grambling in the conference, but it's still big because you've got 1 loss now. Whereas for Bethune-Cookman, everything is still ahead of it. This is the thing about Bethune-Cookman. Bethune-Cookman coming off a bye has been outstanding. This year, Bethune-Cookman won coming off a bye. Last year, Bethune-Cookman won coming off a bye. 19, Bethune-Cookman did not win coming off a bye. 18, Bethune-Cookman didn't have a bye. And 17, Bethune-Cookman won coming off a bye. But even in 2018, Bethune-Cookman that year lost its bye because it chose to use its bye week to play Nebraska. If you all remember that, I think they got a guarantee of like $800,000 or something like that. But even after that loss to Nebraska, which would have been Bethune-Cookman's bye week, still came back the next week and won. So Terry Sims really has his teams prepared coming off bye weeks. Bethune-Cookman coming into that game was 0-2 and was able to win that game coming off a bye week. Terry Sims has his programs prepared coming off of bye weeks. Did a really good job, and I think Bethune-Cookman, we're going to see a bit of a difference because, listen, playing against Miami, that's playing against Miami. Tough game. You lose to South Carolina State, who, yes, the defending champs. I still need to see more. I mean, we haven't seen enough. I don't want to make a judgment on South Carolina State right now. I need to see a little bit more. But from what I saw against A&T and Bethune-Cookman losing that game 33-9 to South Carolina State, I'm like, wow, that was a big loss. But again, bye week preparation. I asked Coach Sims about it. He just said this is a routine we've done every year. We go back to the basic fundamentals of the game. And obviously that has worked. Nothing different this year either. And that has worked. You're talking about 3 of the last 4 years where Bethune-Cookman has had a bye. It has won those ball games. And then even the year it didn't, it ultimately won the game the week after it was supposed to have had a bye. So I think that's magnificent and it's big. And it shows the preparation that Terry Sims and his staff has to detail. All coaches say, bye week, we're going to do this. We're going to get back to academics. We're going to do all this. And then next week, it just doesn't work out. But not so much that being the case for Terry Sims and Bethune-Cookman. So that's another takeaway. I look at Virginia Union. I mentioned the 6 undefeated HBCUs, big win over Fayetteville State. That's a game that we could see as a rematch in the CIAA championship game this year. Very possible that we could see that game as a rematch. So those are some of my takeaways here on Takeaway Tuesday on the HBCU Football Daily Podcast. Don't forget to tell a couple of friends about the HBCU Football Daily Podcast, where you can find us on our website at boxtorow.com. You can also find us on iHeartMedia or wherever you get your podcast. You can also watch on the Box to Row YouTube page. On tomorrow's HBCU Football Daily Podcast, Jamie Gillen, punter for the New York Giants, will be our guest. And remember, he was the punter the previous 3 years for the Browns, was an HBCU All-American at Arkansas Pine Bluff. It's got a good story, an interesting story. It's an interesting conversation. And we're going to bring it to you on the HBCU Football Daily Podcast on tomorrow. Talk with you then.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the HBCU Football Daily Podcast. You can also listen to the podcast at boxtorow.com, iHeartMedia, or wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to get your HBCU football fix on Box to Row with Donal Ware each weekend on the radio station near you, and on SiriusXM on HBCU, Channel 142, and on ESPNU Radio on SiriusXM, Channel 84. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Box to Row for the latest in HBCU football, and don't forget to tell a friend.